is Miss Edens is on virtually, so we have Justin. Good. We don't have a live feed coming in. We are unmuted. 1 second. Was the camera working previously? Yes. Okay. Camera feed right now. Sorry, Chair, this might take a second. I think this laptop isn't picking up the feed.
We want to the closed session so that.
Yeah, in that case, once we get started, if you just, if somebody could request a motion, and then we could reorganize the
I mean,
meeting.
unless we got it. One. We'll totally.
Here's-
First. But. Yeah. It's kind of.
Goodness gracious. It's not connected to the webcam now.
I'm wondering if the audio feed's also only coming from the computer, because I can hear you great when you're in front of it, but there's really, really quiet chatter in the rest of the room. So I'm wondering if the overhead mic, and that's okay. If the overhead mics don't work, just have everybody, I don't know, yell into the laptop.
Good to go. Ms. Edens, can you hear us here?
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for the October meeting. I guess the first October meeting of the Administration and Public Works Committee. We start tonight with our roll call.
Excuse me. Chair Farmer,
Here.
Chair Edens,
Here,
Vice Chair, Councilmember Rose,
Here.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Hopper, Councilmember Albers, Councilmember
She
Nyan,
might not be able to hear us.
Councilmember Jackson.
She didn't respond.
She's up there.
Oh,
All right. That takes us to the acceptance of minutes. We've got our minutes from our let's see, July, August, and September meetings. Would anybody care to make a motion to approve them?
I'd like to clarify why the July 2nd meeting, last time I thought it was incorrect.
Sure.
After listening to it closely, and maybe in the future, we could prevent what happened at city council on the Pond Road thing. As we were all discussing it, we had one motion to have Rick go back to the state to be able to answer those questions and re-rate the crossover. And the assumption was we could get it back as soon as possible. Thought we'd have it at the Admin and Public Works Committee before we ever went to the council.
Got it.
We never did that. We went to council, they couldn't, we did it in work session. They could not comment at all. So now you get all these people who are gonna complain about everything. But I mean, just hindsight, looking back at it, we had one motion, then we amended it, then we said, let's go take it to the full work session. But we were going to try to get a better safety value if we crossed the whole thing off and didn't do any turns. So we didn't have any of that stuff when we got into work session with the whole council, and it just went pushing through. So I was just trying to, because I remember those pieces of it, but I went back and listened to it, and we had it both different ways. And in the minutes, we didn't specifically say work session. Or we said admin public works once, and we came back and said do it in the work session. So I'm happy to make a motion. What we have, if you listen to it over, is probably pretty good.
Okay,
I think we could avoid that in the future.
we'll do our best. All right, so then you want to make a motion to approve them with the adjustment?
No, I don't think we need to make an adjustment. If you just get back and listen to it for an hour, you can get it straight, but I think it's fine.
Okay. All
I'll
right,
make a motion to approve the July 2nd one.
all right, how about do we have to do them each individually or do we?
it can be done as long as as long as the committee's okay with it.
All right. You got anything on August or September?
I could approve both of those.
All right, so
I
we have-
have some questions in a second.
A motion to approve those. Anybody care to second? Mr. Alper seconds. All right, all those in favor of approving our minutes from July, August, and September, please say aye. Aye. Lauren?
just a quick question. I can't tell if you need
Think
me
you're
for the
maybe
forum,
muted?
so if the only way it passes is with
No,
my
just let
vote,
know
I'll
if
vote
it's working.
yes. But if, oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Does the thumbs up count?
Can you hear me?
Hang on, Lauren, we're having a little,
Okay,
there we go. We heard you.
okay, quick question. I can't tell who's in the room. Do you need me to vote yes for this to pass? Because I will procedurally, I'd prefer to abstain because I was out of town for the July meeting and another rescheduled one. But if the only way procedurally that it passes is with my vote, then you have a yes. If not, I'd like to abstain. I can't see everybody in the room, so I don't know if I make the majority or not.
No, I think we're good, so you can abstain.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We good?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. Moving on, public participation.
So in this case, just to clarify, Ms. Edens is abstaining from the
From-
approval from all three minutes.
Yeah, Lauren, you want to do all three?
It was the
Yeah,
motion with.
because that was the motion with all
Yeah.
three. Yes, she will.
Okay.
Okay, do we have anybody on?
We do have one Ron, but we don't, if you're with us, if you could use the raise hand feature. Please, Brendan. Scott. Up there next to panelists.
He's in the chat. I see him up top. All right,
In case, I've hit.
Nathan's coming on.
Oh, yeah, okay, there's Nation Clock. Okay, no public comment here this evening. That takes us into our administration portion. And if anybody would be willing, it's probably a good idea to move. Do we just want to do our treasurer report or the fund balance?
In that case, we need a motion to,
Do you want to move both of those, and move to the closed session at the bottom, or just move it?
yeah, I would just say move the, amend the scheduling of the agenda to move the closed session to after the admin items.
Okay, anybody care to make a motion to drop our thing? All right, thank you. Larry makes the motion. Anybody care to second?
I could second this.
Mr. Marshall seconds. All those in favor of moving our closed session to the bottom of our administration portion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that brings us to a report from our wonderful city treasurer on our investment policy. Take it away, sir.
Good evening, everybody. So I did, I sent a memo to the committee. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at that? So I was asked, after I'd come on as treasurer, take a look at the responses that we had received an RFP for investment management services. And I've looked at those. It's in the, I mentioned it in the memo. And we've met with a few of the firms. And as I went through my analysis of firms and what they could do for the city from an investment standpoint, I have come to the conclusion that what we have currently with our Commerce Capital Markets Group is the best way forward for the investments that we have and the investments that we would participate in the future. That's just kind of my what I think.
All right.
I mean, the RFP, Thomas, I don't know, has that been distributed to everyone, the RFP and the results of, so decision going forward of using an investment manager, obviously would be with the committee.
All right.
So, how, are we talking about fund balance? Like number two?
I skipped that treasurer report, so we jumped to, we'll come back to 3 years. Or I'm sorry, we go back to 2. We'll go back to 2. We're at 3.
Okay, we're at three. Well, everybody knows this has been a very hot topic for me. I've known Tony for years. I actually suggested to the mayor that he talk to Tony about being treasurer. And the great vision of the city. But I so disagree with this. And what I'd like to do is a little bit later down in the agenda, just as a way to make a point, pull up the truck purchase on the agenda.
That link was broken today.
It works now.
Yeah, it works now. So buying a truck is a commodity, buying a security is a commodity. So let's make the argument that we go out and we hire someone to manage our fleet. And I'm involved with an organization that we actually do hire somebody to manage the fleet because it's very large. But we hire somebody and we pay them 5 basis points. Now let's just use round numbers, it's 40,000. And then the other bid was twice as much, it was 10 basis points. 10 basis points, twice. The person that charges 5 came back with a bid of $36,290. The person that charges 10 came back at $33,931. Which one is better for the city? You're a smart guy, Joe. So that's one point. Commerce Bank, and Tom, I think you're aware of some of this, grossly overcharged us on our purchases. And I can prove that. And I'm assuming, Tom, that you are aware of that from past discussions. That's one point. The other point, so whether it's 10 or 20 or 5 or 10, if we bought a truck for $36,290, and paid 5 basis points, we still spent a lot more money. Now, the other point I have is, Rick, when we go into bidding for streets and bridges and all that, we typically look at, I think in the committee and maybe through a closed session, we actually review those, even though you have a recommendation. And when Mayor Boland had suggested this come back to admin because we had never reviewed those proposals. So that's number 2. But my position has always been, and I'll vote no to this, and we can just move forward and get it over with. But I think Commerce Bank is an excellent bank. But I also think the bond trader grossly overcharged us. And the reason I say that is that after those trades were done, which was February of, I don't remember, 23, 22, this thing's dragged out so long. I was looking at the investment report and I'm going, why do we have such a large unrealized loss when the market hasn't moved? So the $25 million in trades, I had someone that actually I would recommend for this. Go back and look at where the treasury market was on that day and looked at, because it's the most liquid market in the world. Information is available every minute. And the estimate is that had this company, which is one I don't even know if you even spoke with them, who I've worked with them for 40 years. The trades would have been somewhere between 80,000 to 120,000 lower costs to the city. Or 7 or 8 times more than what they're saying their 11 basis points is. So we paid 11 basis points, but we just paid 36,000 for a truck when we should have got it for 34. Because you got, and then the other thing that's sort of like on this thing is like, and I don't know this, but I suspect it, but subsequent to this, me bringing forward some of this information, we have essentially exclusively done every trade with the same entity that I'm committed to saying overcharged us. And now we're actually saying, let's deal with them. Now, this is before Tony joined, and I don't think this is all new to you, Thomas, but that's my position. And I'll say, Commerce is a really good company, but they had somebody in there that took advantage of our relationship, and treasury prices and commodity prices are as exact as those 3 truck purchases. There's not any difference. So tell me why we should pay 36,000 for the truck. There could be a very good reason. It could be that Elko is close. They have the best service, whatever. But without a reason, and we actually took the low bid, which I don't know if Don Brown being further away, maybe if Elko was 500 or 1,000 more, it still might be a better deal. But where do we have any data where we've done this analysis with our securities? It's the information, it's a commodity just like a truck. Now, there's no service requirement. The other thing is it's less important, but the securities that were selected, the securities we purchased, they scratched their head as to why we did like strips. They're treasuries, they're all guaranteed, no credit risk, all that kind of stuff, but they don't yield as well. So the question is why? So I'm just saying is that, this thing's been going on a long time. This is just speculation, but if we were to do an autopsy, which we could do, of every trade, including that 25 million, And we did every one until this current day. And then if we went to, let's just say, candidate B and say, what would you have charged us? And they say, well, it's all hindsight, right? Well, they also have trades with customers those same days. And you could say, here was where the market was, here where they bought it. Here was the market here, and that's where you bought it. So it is quantifiable. And I would say if we did a complete autopsy, because I think we've done other trades since then, which I wasn't really in favor of, but it happened. I'd say that numbers, I would have rather spent it on something else. So that is why, we're a good city, but we screw up occasionally. And we pay for it. Commerce is a good bank. I dealt with them when I was in banking. We had lines of credit with them. They did a portfolio of mortgages for us. Good bank. The correspondent side has worked well. But when we drifted over to the security side, the bond trader sort of took advantage of the situation. And so I would just say, I'm definitely a big no. I don't. And I'm disappointed at this point that we haven't viewed trading of securities similar to this little sheet here that says, we're gonna buy a $36,000 truck, and we went out and got 3 bids. And we got $40 million that we put, like, as I said in the council meeting, with the previous city administrator, we fell asleep. We just fell asleep at the wheel. So, okay, I'm done.
Anybody have anything else?
I just want to clear up something.
Yeah.
The truck is your scenario of showing us how there's varying prices. But you're referring that back to trading bonds.
Correct.
So under the government program buying, we've always done it this way, and we get the lowest price. But you're referring to when we're trading bonds, not just because the way we buy the truck or anything. I just got lost in that process.
Well,
I mean, we take the money out of the general fund to pay for the truck.
Pricing when we do bonds, nor do we compare it to the market. I mean,
I get that part. I was just confused because we have always bought under the state cooperative purchasing program. So we don't buy bonds that way, right?
well, yeah, I'm just using it as an analogy.
Got it. Never mind.
So I just have a question, Tony. I don't know if you'll know the answer to this or not. So is our scenario with Commerce, I mean, is it a kind of like outside person that handles these bonds, like just some guy in a back room, so to speak, that does this? Or is this the larger bank that oversees all of these things? Because I don't disagree with you at all here. I mean, I think, it's easy, I think, to take a lot of municipalities for a ride on some of this stuff, because generally people just don't pay attention to it.
No, the gentleman we deal with, Dennis, is his name? Dennis,
It's,
which one?
Ryan,
Ryan Snell?
Yeah.
The other,
sorry, that was with the capital. That's Jason Snell.
Jason Snell.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason, so we dealt with Jason. Again, visiting with him on our previous investments, he did say, that's when he came to say 11 basis points going forward with each trade showing what the market is. Now, Larry, we did not do a forensic backwards of each and every trade that we've done, because we've had some, we could do that, we certainly could press them on that and further utilizing ICE or something like that from a daily funds rate to see where.
Well, the funds
see where
rate-
we stand. Not Fed funds, even,
But I
the treasury,
understand.
the treasury rates.
But let me ask this question, Thomas, to you. If we did this autopsy and it came back that we could demonstrate that if we were involved with a different entity for the purchase of our bonds, that we were overcharged by $200,000 by Commerce, what would be your position on state going forward with Commerce?
I would say for the investment portion of it, that would be pretty damning. But in this case, with them locked in at 11 basis points moving forward, that helps. But if they did that for a significant amount of time, especially leading up when I was taking over, that would be I'd recommend against it, depending on the other
Because
rates that are out there
The
too.
thing that I wanna make sure that you understand, the 11 basis points is one way to charge. It has spread. Where they gouge their eyeballs out. Okay. And that is, and that's something that with any of the people that put in RFPs, their size is such that they probably had other trades on the same day with the same security, because again, the treasuries are, they're constant. So they could actually come back and say, well, here's customer B. And we bought it at this price and we sold it at this price. Let Commerce do that, because either two things are gonna happen. They either rip their eyeballs out, or they are the worst traders in the world. And I don't think they're the worst traders. And I say trader and not in a treason sense, but in the trading. So I don't think they're bad traders. I mean, I've been on bond floors. If you can, these guys are not nice people. They like to make money. So that's, I've said it, I'm not changing my position, but if everybody wants to vote in favor.
I might suggest this, and I am of the opinion, we have spent a lot of time on this, but I also am. And while I appreciate your input, Tony, on it, of course, too, I don't know that I'm not sure that this is a super satisfactory answer, because I think that there are still some questions out there that can be answered for us, so we have an idea of what that is. So, I mean, I am just one vote, but I don't have like some personal drive to get this thing done all of a sudden. If we can figure out some of these other things, I think a motion to do that would probably be an appropriate path. That would be my suggestion. If you'd like to make that, that would make sense to me.
I would just say we go back and do an autopsy starting at the 25 million and through the current trades. And Commerce should be able to show us purchase tickets and sale tickets. And then they made 3 or 4 years of annual revenue on one day. And that's what was wrong.
Okay.
And then they can, maybe we'll come back. Now, if it comes back and says that they sold everyone 1 basis point different than they bought it, or 2, then they're terrible at their job. Because I know where the market was on that day. So, I mean, that data, is all available. And then, because I don't know, like, if it's happened before, someone might say it could happen again.
Sure.
And if it was a mistake, then reimburse us. If it was deliberate, why would you treat such a great customer like the city of Wildwood like that? You charge your best customer, maybe not the lowest price, but you charge them a fair price. And you give them great service. So.
A few other
Yeah.
points. I was on subsequent investments. Have they
Yes.
been showing the
So
ticket
for-
details, 11 plus the,
So
the ticket
two-
details, the current price plus 11 basis points.
two things on that, on the actual ticket, it shows that, and it is confirmed again via email and writing. So if that were ever determined that it was over 11 basis points, that they would reimburse us. So that, yes,
So we've been doing that going forward. And then also for the committee, if we move towards an investment manager, and the basis points charged on all of our investments, it would also include the overnight repos, which is another $11 million that we'd be paying an ongoing fee. So it's just, it's the, pay as you go, a transaction price versus kind of the consulting and.
What do you mean a
advisory fee.
transaction price?
We're paying whatever that basis, those basis points are. But at each transaction that we make, there's not an ongoing fee for all of our investments.
That's
Don't
not
get it.
how it works with an RAI.
With the investment advisory, we'd be paying the 12 to 20 basis points on our overall investment balance of 44 million versus the basis points we're paying for each trade that we.
Are you saying there's a spread on each purchase?
Not in an RIA situation.
So in the commerce scenario.
Commerce situation is as we go, each trade.
So
paying as
my
you go
question would be is
versus
like,
the ongoing.
Thomas, what you just said is that if for some reason they charge us more, which I'm not, because if they charge us more, it goes against the fee of an RIA. But if they charge us more, they're gonna reimburse us. Did you say that?
They are providing in writing that it's 11 basis points now. And I would have to do the autopsy to figure out before, but now it's 11 basis points in writing via email, but also on the ticket as well. You could see the change.
But if you're a registered investment advisor,
No,
you
that's
do
not it.
not charge a transaction fee.
Correct.
So there's no 11 basis points on any invoice.
It's really just identifying the spread. It's saying that our
There is
spread,
no spread.
No, it's
There
a
is no spread. My
different,
financial advisor, what he pays is what I pay. Then I pay a management fee, which is 11 basis points.
that's.
So there is no spread. See, and in part, that's why I sort of think we need an investment advisor, because I'm a little confused. So you're saying on an invoice, what they pay is what we pay.
in this
I
case,
don't think that's what's happening. I think they're getting a spread.
Well, let's do it this way. We've got a motion ostensibly on the floor to do a autopsy, so to speak, on some of these previous things. So let's, if we have a second for that, anybody, Ed or Rob?
I'll second.
Rob will second it. So let's get that step
Okay.
done, and then we can figure out the rest of this stuff if it passes. That makes sense?
That's good.
Okay,
Could we clarify exactly what they're gonna do
yes,
and who's gonna do it?
yes, let's do that. What do you have for our, where are we at for our motion?
I was gonna ask for clarity.
Okay,
because
perfect.
it's a little-
Miss Eden
little
saw
vague.
her hand up.
Oh.
I didn't want to interrupt.
That's okay.
Who wants to do it?
Lauren,
Yeah,
what,
I had some comments before because one of the questions that I'm really interested in, and again, I don't come from a finance background, and so, but my concern is even if they're charging us a lower rate, if they're frequently trading and earning a commission off of each trade, as long as it's a slightly better value, that commission is what I think is causing the losses that I'm seeing on the spreadsheets from maybe trading that's not illegal, but is not perhaps super beneficial, because I can't figure out how, if the market's been stable or has increased, slightly during the trading time, how else we'd have these losses if it's not because of continual trades and commissions. So to help me understand this better, one thing I'd want this autopsy or whatever you want to call it to show is, does it make sense that a full 14 million is in overnight repurchasing agreements? Or does less money need to be in that? Just to cut down the number of trades. And again, this is not my area of expertise, and I don't know what else to call it, but in my mind, it's something like rate churning.
all right, so I think probably we'll see some of that in this autopsy, I would think, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say is that, maybe there could be, maybe the motion would be is that, between Thomas and Tony, that you guys actually prepare an outline as to what you're gonna be requesting and provide it to the committee. Which then I'm happy to participate, but at the same time, I don't think it's my job.
Right.
But I'm happy to. And then we could provide feedback, because, Lauren, what you're saying in part, we're not really like day trading or trading a portfolio. But, between an 11 basis point fee and a transactional fee and a spread, there are different departments at Commerce. And the RIA may be well within the rules, but I just think that we need to just have an outline as to what the scope of this review would be, and then we comment it, because right now I'm not sure that we're all on the same page.
Okay.
And that would just, then you could write it up. I mean, I don't even care if you ask Commerce and says, we got a really jerk that wants to beat you guys up, which I will do that. And we just wanna get an outline. Cause the thing is I think at the end of the day, they're gonna come back and say, hey, give us a second chance. And I'm gonna say, write us a big check.
Okay,
So an autopsy of what exactly?
I would say to clarify your motion, Mr. Bros, we'd come back with almost like an outline of what the request would be to Commerce from the city. And then
Yeah, from
you
the
all-
initial, whatever,
Like, these
$25
dates
million
we'd like to know what
grade
comparables are.
through today. And not repos. I'm not worried about the repos.
So specifically on bonds, CDs
Yeah,
and strips. Okay.
and not even really CDs, because a CD, you knew the rate.
Yeah.
And a CD is like, we all are more familiar with that.
Yeah.
It's, I hope we didn't buy any 2% CDs when the market was 5. But, and I don't think we did, but I do think that, somebody got a nice car out of it.
so, okay, so
So it's a motion for Thomas and Tony to do an outline for the bonds.
An outline to send to Commerce to request information on previous transactions related to bonds or strips.
and we wanna go back to that. Assume, do we know when that was?
And if they, Thomas, you could throw in there too, and then their thought on the selection of the security, because those strips made no sense. They made no sense.
Okay. And then do we wanna put, I assume,
Larry, what, from the standpoint of strips, why does that, just so
Lower
I
yield.
understand, the yield?
Same security with a lower yield. Why would you do that?
Is, I think there is some appropriateness in our portfolio from a timing standpoint, where the strips are, and again, there's a lot of reporting as well. They're purchased at a discount and they accrete to a maturing value. We have to report where they are at that moment in time, so we're always going to be below the maturity value, so it's gonna look like a loss. We could probably build
No,
something.
no, you're wrong. A bond also, a bill does the same thing.
They'll change, they will fluctuate with the
You buy them
market.
at a
with the
discount,
price.
they mature at
with the
par,
price
but
of- with
you don't
interest
have an
rates.
unrealized loss just because you bought them at a discount. The strips, I'll have you talk to somebody. There's no reason why we should have bought strips. But let them,
Okay.
yeah, let's let them explain what
that's
the
a
deal is.
question they can answer.
And then-
There's maybe 2 opinions, but they're both gonna accrete. But that does not mean that we don't show an unrealized loss comparing it to par. It's compared to market value. And go back to that February report, and look at the few months after, and I know this is before you started. And then look at the market change.
Yeah, we'll look at it, we will.
So,
I'm still, maybe I'll talk offline with you on that, but I've got a different
Yeah, that's, and,
vision for a T-bill versus the way a strip works, or a zero.
yeah, but a short-term strip and a T-bill are the same thing.
Price-wise.
In practice.
all right, so then do we wanna put a time frame on this? Because we do have as long as it takes them?
I don't think we are endangering the city.
Okay.
But, we're going on 2 years.
All right,
I think February would be 2 years, right? So.
Yeah.
gotta be close. Okay, so
2 years for.
everybody's clear on what we're doing?
If she has it clear enough.
And maybe I'll be gone by then, and then you guys can pass it, and we'll be good, and everybody's happy.
We'll rename it.
All right. Amy, would you mind reading back to us what you've got?
The motion for Thomas and Tony to do an outline to send to Commerce related to the bonds and the selection on strips and the lower yield.
That sound right, Larry?
I think that's gonna get the ball rolling.
Okay,
I got it, dude. It's really just preparing an outline for committee's review that would go to Commerce, identifying certain transactions involved, their strips and bonds. Came with that recommendation to the city and potential comparisons that would be provided as well.
Got
The same trade.
All right, and we'll get that back as soon as we can, but there's a lot of other stuff going on, all right? Rob, you good with that for a
Yes.
second? Okay, Lauren and Nathan, you guys hear that? You good on what we're doing? Okay. All those in favor of our investment autopsy recap outline situation, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that passes, and that sounds like you guys are gonna have so much fun doing it. I can't wait to hear more about it. All right, up next, we have our investment now,
So
our budget surplus. Where did I mention it?
it's a
Sorry.
fund balance reserve.
Fund balance reserve policy, who's handling it?
Care of that. In this case, and we can have, and once we bring this either to council or if we want to continue with the discussion as well. Ms. Joy, Ms. Howard actually can come back to the meeting. She was here at the last one, but she wanted to, at the last meeting, we wanted to have the 2023 year-end numbers included in the report that she provided. At the time where she had submitted before, we are still getting the final annual report finalized. So in this case, we have added the 2023 numbers, which doesn't change the actual policy that she's recommending for how we would amend it going forward and what we plan to keep. But truly, if you want to break this down, she is recommending, she's met with multiple city officials. She's reviewed multiple years of the budget and also our year-end reports that go to the auditors. And she's come back with specifically with watershed erosion and some other larger issues the city's currently sitting with. And not knowing also if, the pool tax could potentially have, issues moving forward. There's just a lot of variables. So in this case, right now, we hold about 25%, not about, but 25% of expenditures in our actual reserve or dedicated reserve each year. And that's out of the operating. She would be recommending on top of that, that are pretty much our fund balance, our ending fund balance, after what we spend all year, how much we have left in the piggy bank. She's saying that number should always equal 100% of current expenditures from the previous fiscal year. So in this case, when you're looking back on the prior year, that number would have equaled, it was approximately, I believe, 11 million, what's the exact number here? 11,851,693. So if we were using 2023 as an example, she would be recommending that the city's ending fund balance that's reserved theoretically should equal that $11 million number. And each year it would change depending on what those expenditures reach for the previous fiscal year. So if we have, we see an influx in revenue and we start expanding as a city on our expenditures as well, that number would naturally increase as part of the overall budgeting process and the approval by the city council. So in this case, it would increase the amount of money we would be putting into more of a dedicated reserve that would have some restrictions to it. That being said too, if following this policy and taking into account that the 2023 numbers don't have the year management fund creation and the $1,010,724 that was directed to the capital improvement sales tax fund for phase 2, that would leave us with approximately, it was about $6,060,000 that were over that 100% mark. So in this case, she's identified that. She's recommending currently we should probably stay around that 100% range. And if we were to try to dip below it, you're going to want to fill that back up. And at this point, right now it's at 25%. So maybe there's a Goldilocks zone between that 100 and 25. This has also been reviewed by our city treasurer as well. So I wanted to make sure I provide an opportunity while you're here if you want to add any additional insight.
Certainly. I know we had a discussion at the city council meeting. I think we discussed the reserve and that by our own decision, we had 25% put away, which when you convert a percentage to number of months, a little different perspective. 25% is we've got 3 months of expenses. Maybe that's a little shy. 100% is 12 months of expenses, which might be a little excessive. Is there somewhere in between, say an 8-month or 66% of expenses that we would reserve, kind of gets us through if something untoward happens, gets us through a ability to have a vote, have an election, item on election. So that's if I were to say what I would feel comfortable with, somewhere in the 7 to 8 months of expenses would be.
To add on that too, typically, with the election cycle, we are a city, so we do have the ability to put a tax out to the voters. So if something devastating did happen, I mean, I do think the residents they would be clearly known. So in that case, doing something like an 8-month or a 66%, that would and should get you to the next election. It does cost some money to get on the ballot if you don't do the municipal election in April, but to get a tax passed to make sure the city stays afloat, it's well worth it. So I think that maybe there is a sweet spot between the 25 and that 12-month response, but she was, and just speaking to Ms. Howard's perspective, she was looking at some of these larger projects that we're gonna probably have coming down the pipe with watershed erosion, with an uncertainty of funding coming through for those, but also just making sure that we can continue the maintenance of all the items that we have as assets while also taking on some larger capital projects.
All right, Lauren, I see you got your hand up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so a couple of thoughts. I know that it sounds really conservative to go with for recommendation. But I think we should for now and with the 100% year to date and here's what I'm thinking, right? So picture a natural disaster and it comes to town center, which is where the majority of our businesses are, where we collect sales tax for. So that means if we go to the voters, we're now trying to collect an increased tax, and the only mechanism we have to do it is on businesses that no longer exist. We don't have internet use sales tax. So now we're looking at passing a brand new tax our voters are not really excited about in a time with potentially other natural disaster areas, like a, tax on real estate, which other communities do. I actually don't think that they would approve it, even in times of emergency. And I say that because I just helped campaign for a fire district's ballot initiative. And it is hard to get people to invest in things if they don't feel like the economy is maybe great or just don't like taxes at all, even if it's something that could save their lives. And so if you're thinking about the time where it's an emergency situation where we would really need to do it to recover, I don't know that you can squeeze blood from a stone. And I'm not, just based on what I've just seen now, I'm not really confident that we could get that passed in 8 months. And, FEMA is funded and there's other natural disasters that happen. And so their piggy bank also depends on, what is already left in their coffers by the time they would ever get to a city like Wildwood and write a check. And that depends on a level of cooperation to increase their funds after things like hurricanes happen. I'm a big old grouchy pessimist this week, and I'm sorry to say it. After sitting through the last watershed erosion meeting, Chair Farmer is familiar with this, but if anybody else didn't get a chance to watch that committee, you wouldn't be familiar. We came back with new projects that were suggested by a USGS study in areas that we have no bid or idea how much it would cost. And I came to the conclusion in the meeting that probably would get us moving forward would be a bond for major projects. And so I know in the memo, and I did ask for this to be answered. So 2023 got updated, but not the percent that we need to maintain to get a good bond rating. I know for other jurisdictions, it's like 40%, but that's not the same as this. So I don't know what gets us a AAA bond rating in terms of savings, but I wish that would have been answered because my opinion is that the council will have to pivot that way. But I think until we, watershed erosion right now, and I think it's keeping Council Farmer and I up at night. It's like watching a slow moving train that's, gonna derail off the tracks. And I'm not convinced that now is the time to, there's just going to be a lot of hands in the pot. So if it doesn't go to the things that are going to potentially cause mass failure, I think it should be left in the bank. I'm rambling now, but the point is, I don't know that I cannot honestly look at you and say, in an emergency situation, the community will support a tax increase. I don't believe it will happen. So I think we need to hedge our bets that it won't.
Mr. Bruce.
Well, I agree with, probably where the suggestion is and where to be. I think 25 is too low, but I don't necessarily agree with having our reserves tied to a percentage of our operating expenses, because that's not why we have. You know, in my business, I wish I could have had the revenue flow that the city has. I mean, boom, boom, it just comes in. And even during COVID, it was stress test and it didn't really drop. So, our revenue base, that is a threat. Might be more geopolitical than, natural disaster. But I guess my two thoughts on it is that if we talk about erosion needs and all that, we're still not pulling into the reserves to fund that. We have to fund that somewhere else. This is more for an emergency. And Thomas, I think we talked about it one time, but let's just say, for example, we get 30 inches of rain and it wipes out 3 of our bridges, which will happen. I mean, or could happen. I mean, if we had 30 inches of rain. You mentioned that some of our bridges are insured.
Yes, so we do have property insurance on a lot of those, yes.
Okay, so if the bridges on Wild Horse Creek were wiped out, would that cost the city $1 million or $10 million or?
It would, I'd have to look that up, but it would be a pretty high amount. We wouldn't get away scot-free.
Well, but if we have those bridges, if all 5 of them, let's just say they're 3 million apiece or whatever, say it's 15 million. Is our property insurance cover half?
We meet a deductible, so typically it's actually pretty low, but it's different for different assets. So in this
Okay,
case.
so I think part of our analysis is we need to look at a natural disaster and what is our risk. And when we talked about this before, and I think it was after the meeting, when I learned that we got insurance, well, that's cool. And there was one other factor that I think mitigated some of our risk, and I don't remember what that was. A washed out road, do we have insurance for that? But I think that needs to be part of the analysis. And I think we need more than 25% of our expenses because of risks that would not be insured, such as some of our erosion issues. But if we have risks that, like say, for example, we had to go out and immediately spend $7 or $8 million on 2 bridges, but 6 months later or 9 months later, we're getting a refund from the insurance company. Well, I think you would dip into that. And the question is, can we do that? Maybe I mean, if it's over 3.5 million or 5 million in a disaster, does it need voter approval?
So you can do that as an emergency, but
Okay.
the definition is emergency. It's not if you've got $7 million in a bank account. You wouldn't consider that emergency. You could use your money. You're not going to ask for more money that way. So the charter just says that if it's an emergency, it can be excluded from that. The council can move forward without a vote from the public.
But I just think to me, like if our roads and bridges, to me, I think is a major risk to the city. But if we can offset that risk because we have insurance, then we still have that risk, but it's small. And then you take what I think is the largest risk in our city is an uninsured loss, which I think falls into erosion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I don't know if we could quantify that.
I mean, along those lines, I think too, like if something were to happen and let's say we had one of these storms and the triple meander blew out and it took out a bridge. Does insurance cover that because we are aware of a problem that is going on?
That should be getting to a point where Rick, you could speak to this a little bit, but I mean, that should be getting to a point where SEMA or this county the county's definitely involved at that point, and we should be getting reimbursed if the governor determines it. But in this case, I'm double checking now to see 100% if 'cause there's different conditions that would make it so that bridge apply, like,
Right.
depending on what happens to the bridge,
Right.
that's gonna that's gonna be the difference between does it cover or not. I'm thinking that rain and water is one of the items.
So when we came up with the 25% years ago, Curves Mill Road Bridge washed out. County had no money. And so we had the bridge closed for a long, long time until the county could then process it to come in and replace that bridge. We in turn, I mean, we started out like 1.5 million.
Right.
And every year as we try to bank a little bit more of that money, the 25% came up as the fact that we had a police contract, but we didn't have the public service tax we have now. And then as far as like what Lauren is saying, the business shutdown, we're not depending on any sales tax from any of our businesses.
Right.
That's all just part of the pool tax. So we don't see, and as Larry mentioned, it's a pretty consistent flow of cash in order to do it. How you build the reserve, I think would be very different. And I don't think, I get, one of the questions I asked Joy, and I thought we'd get back to it, is because we have unique funding in St. Louis County, how many other cities in the county have 100%?
Right.
Nobody has to, because the flow of the county revenue coming through and the fact that that revenue, nobody really needs to be that high. We did it 25% because we had the police force, that if we couldn't pay for it and the county was slow in getting some money. So I kind of agree that there's a midpoint there somewhere. And then I also think that we should look at, in the worst case scenario, what do you do? The other part that we've delayed and delayed and delayed now for almost at least 25 years is the cost for parks and sewer and erosion. Every year we started out, it's like, well, let's wait till we get one park done and then we'll go back to the residents, because when we went in and got the capital improvement tax, which was 0.5%, that's $2.5 million a year. You could use that for bonding and that type of thing. But when you're setting on, $7 or $8 million reserve, that's really hard to get. It only take one person to say, hey, wait a minute, they've got $7 million. Why would you, vote for an increase for taxes? I just think it's a bigger discussion. Just long term, what you want to do, because you can tear yourself up trying to take care of park stuff, and the grants are great. It's the ongoing maintenance that eats your lunch. So that's.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying. I think the only thing that, if we take a typical city in our area and then we compare it to us, I think our footprint and our terrain separates us. And that's, I'm not,
But likewise, we have less public streets than the rest of the county, the county roads, the state roads, we have probably percentage wise less. I'm not disagreeing with, I just think it's
the
a bigger
erosion
subject.
is the thing, and we could have an erosion issue and, and even though I'm on private streets, I can't get to the valley.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But I think, part of this, I think that middle ground is, I think we're fine. I think we hear agreement there, but to me, it still comes back to, is the best time to plan is now for the event. So if we have roads, if we have bridges, we really need to understand what our real exposure is. And I mean, there's a good likelihood that we would never lose every bridge in the city in one event, unless you're in North Carolina. But what is that number? And it talks about we could spend it and then how would we replenish it? Well, if we have insurance, we're replenishing it. So I think we need to quantify that number, because I think is a big risk. And then I think on top of that number, you're in that, it'd be a comfort zone for us to say, we got 6 months of expenses covered. I mean, but I think that our roads and our bridges, I mean, we need those to operate.
And to provide a little bit of context and determining what applies when, but for paved services, our current insurance policy would cover up to $3 million, and we would only actually have to pay $5,000 for the deductible. That would be if
But
we
it
had.
caps
trouble
at
for
3
us.
million, right?
Caps
So
at
that's
3
like
million.
one bridge.
Yep, so in that case,
Is that per event?
that's per event, so if it.
So one storm,
Yeah, one storm, yeah.
not
That's
one
exactly right.
bridge?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Okay, so,
I mean, you gotta limit the bridges that go out, one per storm then.
well, like Wild Horse Creek, for example, if that valley got 30 or 40
Right.
feet of water.
Sorry, if you don't mind.
Every,
Just looking at this too, one thing too that is important to take into account is that there's different So 3 million for paved surfaces, but there's also, on different properties that are located within more dangerous flood zones. The more dangerous the flood zone, you're gonna lower that to 500,000. But if you're in a safe flood zone, that it's just a historical flood event, then that max is actually up to 5 million. So in that case, and that would be, this is not paved surfaces, this is inclusive of more personal property, City Hall, Anniversary Park, things along those lines.
That would be 100-year floodplain.
That would, yeah, yes.
Well, I just think we could outline where our bridges are and some of
Yeah, I
them.
think
That's
that's
what's scary.
would be good.
And then just quantify what that risk is.
So Ed, I don't know if you'll.
And then Rick, too,
constitutes an
the
emergency.
standards that the bridge was built
For
to.
the city, you mean to,
So like we can
Some
kick in that
probably
money
wouldn't
without.
withstand it and some that
well, because we
would.
already have the money, we're not asking for the taxpayers to do it because it is an emergency.
Well, I know what I'm saying, like, so not that I'm necessarily advocating for this or necessarily not, but let's say we needed to spend $3 million to fix the triple meander. Can we just do that without asking for a vote because we have the money?
We could do that if we planned it to do with it, with our money that we already have. But if we were spending it on a facility,
Uh-huh.
facility's a big kicker there. So when
It is.
you talk about parks and stuff like that, that becomes a facility. I still question about the internet expenditures. Because in that particular case, that is related to a utility type thing. So from an emergency standpoint, the city can elect to, the council can override the charter requirements of that 3.2 million. But if you're doing it for some type of other investment, like we said, well, we want to just do it to focus on internet, you have to take all the money that's ever been spent on internet
Add it up.
and add it up. And once you hit that 3.25, same thing like on community park. If you go in and want to do more in community park and it's over 3.25, that has to go to the voters.
But I mean, I guess, and again, this is in the past, but when we were passing that internet situation, that was sort of like right in the middle of COVID stuff. So could we not have said, well, this is an emergency and therefore we are enacting these powers?
Technically, I think we should have gone to the voters.
Well, ARPA money didn't need to go to.
Any government funding, and if you read the charter, any funding, wherever it comes from, needs to go to the voters.
Well, John Young would not agree with you.
I would,
I mean, I've asked that question
Yeah.
numerous times.
I just, you
Well,
got it,
that's-
so let's go on, but I really think
Ask the
that was
question
very
again.
questionable, the way the charter was written. And when we were doing the charter the last time, that particular question was asked. We said, no, you can't do that. So,
Okay, well, that, maybe you and John should debate that.
but that was before John was here, so I
Yeah,
mean, he
well,
just.
he's saying clearly that did not have to go, so that would be maybe we ask the question again.
Well, we've spent it, so I wouldn't worry
Yeah.
about it now.
So anybody have anything else? No, okay, so if I'm hearing this correctly, Larry, I think we probably want to have do we need a motion to have you guys give us this report? Like
What our.
what the
risk is.
exposure is so that we can figure this out? I mean, cause like I don't know off the top of my head where all these bridges are, or what's in a 100-year floodplain and what isn't and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that, I will say that we can provide that. It might take a second to go into each individual asset and determine what floodplain it is. But that, yeah.
I mean,
I'd say assets that are subject to, they're more subject to risk. I mean, nothing is perfect, but,
yeah,
and we're not out tomorrow looking to spend 8 million on erosion, so it's not like we're.
I mean, I'll take it if that's what we.
The money's not
I'm
going
good with
anywhere now, but to me, I think that plays a big role on what our risk for our city is. And then on top of it, a less quantified, which would be erosion.
Lauren, you had something?
Yeah, please get me more information about that bond question. Because again, I know other government jurisdictions are required to maintain a certain amount for AAA rating. And all our memo said is, well, the city just isn't planning on bonding. But I want to know what our options are in the future for something like erosion. So what's the minimum? Because I know it's going to be more than 25%. I just don't know where it falls.
Okay. Then one other question I had while we're here, I guess I should probably see how much time. So when I was looking through this, my thought was regardless of how much we wind up putting in terms of like 100% or 75% or whatever, there's gonna be some portion of money left over. So I think the bigger question for us is going to be, what are we gonna do with that portion of money? Are we gonna keep 50% of that as like a rainy day fund, and then we've got another 50% that we can, fix this building or whatever it's going to be? I don't know that we need necessarily any additional information from these guys to start that side of the conversation, so I kind of want to throw it out to you guys to see where your thought process might lie on that. Yeah.
My thought on that is that that's our annual budget review. Because it should not be maybe this building is, some of it's time sensitive, but a lot of that, I mean, if it's a non-emergency, it shouldn't be that time sensitive. So 2025, are we gonna be saying we need to spend $1 million on this building? You know, are we gonna have the information by then? And then erosion, do we lobby and try to support $2 million for erosion? I think it becomes a budget item.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it, at least for myself, like, you know, everybody has their own things that they are like, and not that erosion isn't important to everybody, but you know, erosion's a big deal to me, and phase 2 is a big deal to somebody else, and the deer or whatever it is. And so I think everybody right now has a pretty large number in their head of like this pool of money that we have to work with, which actually is not really that big because much of it is spoken for other places. So I just think if we can whittle it down to, you know, we can budget for those things, but like, how much do we have to budget with? Are we talking about $2 million out of this, whatever we got, $18 million thing, or what? I mean, yes, sir.
What about if we all agree that instead of 100%, we say it's 75 or 80%? And then go back into the financials like we do it now, where we've always protected to 25%, and just protect that at that 75% or whatever we feel is comfortable. Then the rest of it, that becomes something that's gonna take a lot more discussion as to how much do we keep for non-insured type items, how much but it would at least get us away from everybody thinking they're gonna spend all that money.
Right.
And then when you do come up with that, that's my biggest fear too, is you put it in there and somebody throws out a meeting and you end up with 6 people agreeing and you give away $3 million. It's like, how'd that happen?
Right.
So I mean, part of, I think that strategy would be on that excess reserve, that we have to have a strategy long-term and how we plan to use that and how much of that needs to be protected, not the operating expense, but how much of that needs to be protected for bridge replacement and that kind of stuff. And then maybe that's like the first bite of the apple, and we get it separated so that as we do our budgeting, we're not trying to pick and choose out of that without it becoming a bigger thought process in order to do
Well,
it.
it's sort of like a circular equation.
Yeah.
You know, we gotta start putting in more variables and it's never gonna stop.
Sorry,
It's a suggestion.
is the suggestion to put that, so let's just say 75% in that dedicated reserve and make it go from 25% to 75%? Are you saying, let's make it the 100%, adding that 75 to the 25?
No, I'm saying I would make it at 75. In my wildest dreams, I don't understand how all revenue would stop at any one point. We wouldn't recover it. So then as we look at a way to do bonding, you're gonna have people say, well, wait a minute, the city's got 100% of a year's expenses and you want us to pay more? That's a hard sell. So I think part of it is, if 75%, that's 3 times what we've done in the past. Unfortunately, we've never had to dig into it. But every year, at least in my 20-some years of doing it, you know, we cut out and say, we gotta save that money. Well, we're sitting there on the money and we're still not taking care of stuff that every year is gonna cost us more to take care of. That's just not planning it very well.
Just have a question. So how many years has that been accumulating? Like once we divvy this and we take the,
I think it's from the beginning.
okay, so. it's not like-
2008 was a fine year.
Yeah. it's gonna take-
We had $2
We
million
don't
that
have
year.
to spend whatever the excess in 1 year.
No,
This is
no.
gonna take us a long.
Yeah, no,
time
it's
to-
basically just, all I'm saying is like, let's have we don't have to spend, we don't have to spend any of it, but I'm just thinking it'd be better to know. Hey, if we have something, you know, like when we were talking, I remember when we were talking about the internet stuff and erosion, originally it was 3 million was going to this and 3 million was going to that. And then all of a sudden ARPA money came in and now no money is going anywhere except for that ARPA money. So these things change very quickly seemingly. And so it would at least help me to know, hey, there is this amount of money in this pool for these types of things, whether it's, you know, like if, for instance, the road out here is like 9 times more than we thought it was going to be, but we have to fix it right now. Is that something we want to dip into that money for? I don't personally, probably not, but that's a conversation that we could have because we know how much money is there to use that.
And I think we could then use that money, and we've done this in the past, to get the grant money for a bridge or something, we go to 30% instead of 20%. I mean, use it strategically to maximize any of the grants we
Yeah,
need.
and as Will said, then you have, I mean, we need to know how much of a reserve you need to get this bond thing, because if it's,
I think it's 25%, I'm pretty sure.
Lauren,
That's like the GFOA is only recommends holding about, I think it's 5 to 15%. So we're exceeding that requirement.
Okay.
And Ms. Howard did say we would have a AAA bond rating if we were to go out just with our current situation. That could change
right,
given the situation, but
Lauren, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I just know, for example, Monarch was required 40%. So but I guess my point is, we could still keep, I think the 2023 year to date, it came in at, what was it, 168% of what we would need to have following her recommendation. So even if we did the 100% rather than the 75, that's still extra money to play around with, and then we can put the guardrails on it. I have the same fears that you do. I can hear certain council members now, and I can hear members of the public, right? Well, suddenly we have this money that's available and things that we've said no to before, maybe because we don't feel that we're legally the ones that should have to pay. Now everybody wants a piece of a very, very, very small pie. And my biggest fear is that we're not maintaining critical infrastructure that we should and could because there's political pressure or voting blocks or something like that. So one way to prevent that is to still keep that 100%. And then we still have a couple, million that we can still fight over until we get a better hold over how much erosion is going to cost. And more of that will come when we get a master plan and can talk about bonding projects. I'd feel much more comfortable with that when I have a better price tag. Because right now I know that I need to buy things and I don't know how much they're going to cost me. And my concern is because it's still going to take a while to produce these reports and the storms are getting worse and worse and worse. While I'm waiting to buy something to come up with the plans, there could be a critical failure that happens in between there and there. That's where my conservatism is coming from, is I don't know what's going to happen in the time before we can kind of get our act together and go out to market. So I'd rather stick with the recommendation because we're so far away from spending that money.
Right, so Tom, what is it that you actually need from us
so
tonight?
tonight the department was requesting a motion, feedback in general about that rate, that number, and the policy, the third attachment that was included, the draft policy. What we would do, say you took it as on face value, it would determine that 100% as more of a dedicated reserve, and then at that point, all it's doing is adding some additional safeguards to that amount of money, pretty much saying if we're taking out of it, we're going to replace it. Have a plan to put the money back. Also, it's just pretty much coming to, in an emergency, it's a little different, but in most cases, say we wanna, take on a project that is dealing with erosion, it would just be coming to the agreement. In this case, we have that 6 million above this number, but say that 6 million wasn't there, we would have to go into this policy and acknowledge that we're going below the amount of our target reserve. So this is pretty much finding a Goldilocks zone. It's saying we wanna hold this much for a rainy day, but we don't wanna hold more than this.
Got it.
So in this case, we were going to take this with the committee's recommendation to the council for full council consideration and discussion. But I think if it needs more time to iron out, I think then in that case, we take direction from the committee.
I mean, I think if you can get some of the answers to the questions we're talking about, I don't have a problem going to the full council. Do you guys?
And we can go, we come back with another recommendation. I mean, in the next, in the near term, call it a year, 2 years, 5 years, I don't think we have any plans to go below 100% anyway.
Right, I mean, we've had it for a long
So,
time.
But I do think I think that regardless where we put that number at, it was very informative that day we talked, Thomas. I did not know about how we've been able to mitigate some of our risk. And I was really pleased to hear that. Because I think that's the biggest risk in our city.
Lauren, is your hand up again, or is that old hand? Okay. All right, then, yes, sir.
I'm happy to, I don't think it needs to be 100%, but in order to move it forward and get it away from the 25%. I would make a motion that we go forward with the recommendation at the 100% for now. So we can do the budget, preserve that, and then leave the others in that, kind of in the unrestricted in order to do that. So that would allow us to move it forward before the budgeting process, but not declaring and using any of the other money other than getting it out of there so it's not a confusing for everyone. That's, I would make that one and then take that forward to the council.
Yeah, and because then we can adjust accordingly if necessary there. Okay,
Just a motion.
all right, so Mr. Marshall makes the motion to just proceed for the moment, I guess, here with the recommendation. As presented, so that's at 100% and then get our budgeting and stuff sorted out and take it to the wider council. Anybody care to second that? Mr. Brost will second it, all right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we will go forward so far with the recommendations, but I do think if you guys could get that other info, that would be very helpful. Okay. Next up, we have our executive session. What do you want to do in the other room?
So with the other room is open, so we can move there.
Okay. All right, we need a motion, I guess, to go to closed session. Anybody care to make that? Mr. Jackson will make it, seconded by Mr. Brost. All those in favor of going to closed session, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, anybody hanging out? Lauren and Nathan, give us a few minutes here. I don't
I'll
think-
hang out till the end of the meeting and I'll come back on when you guys come back.
All right, great. We will return shortly from the other room.
Try.
Come on down.
Yeah. 90% tear on the bike.
Oh.
That's what I later.
Thanks, Tony.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, you need to get out.
No, I just. yesterday.
Mexico for 4 days.
Oh, and then, yeah, I had to call last week.
But for Steve, the I mission.
They,
I pulled up at
I was looking
11
at that yesterday, I'm like,
on
today,
vehicle.
slow to get around, and it's like,
Lions
well,
Club,
maybe that's fine.
9 of us from
Yeah.
Missouri went down. And interpreters.
All right.
I didn't know.
We're back from our closed session, which takes us into our public works section of the meeting. And we have no for information items, so that takes us to our proposed city contractor agreement for the Manchester Taylor resurfacing and signal improvement project. I assume that's you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chair Farmer, council members. I believe this item was on the agenda for the previous meeting. As we introduced the fact that we had bid the Manchester Taylor resurfacing and signal improvement project at the end of August. We had only 3 responses to the bid. The low bidder was Infrastructure Management Contracting Company with a bid of just over $2,985,000. The bid was, we only had 3 bidders for the project. Unfortunately, I'd like to add more. As a result, the bid was come in high above the engineer's estimate for the project. We did apply, and we were fortunate that East West Gateway has a program now where we can make a one-time request to address, make a request for additional federal funding to supplement our existing federal funding for the project. So we had put that request in at the last meeting. We were successful in obtaining it. So that is the best news that I have tonight. So we have an additional $432,000 of federal funding that we can add to the prior 1.44 million to help fund the cost of the improvement project. So the maximum amount that we were eligible for was about 30% over the original estimate for the project. So we got the maximum amount that we were eligible for. So we did have our consultant review all the bid documents and the submitted paperwork. They recommended moving forward and awarding the bid, and MoDOT has provided us bid concurrence at this point. So we would like to move forward and award the project to Infrastructure Management. And so that is the recommendation to the committee tonight, is to move forward with an agreement, a city contractor agreement with Infrastructure Management to construct the project, the Manchester Taylor resurfacing and signal improvement project. At this time, their bid amount was, as I stated, just over $2,985,000, and that would be the amount of the contract. So with that, I will wrap up and open for any questions.
All right, anybody have any questions? I have one, but I think it's maybe just a process thing. How far out from our estimate that the consultants gave us did this come in at? Like how, it was like way over, right?
Well, they're, quite frankly, so the consultant, as we go through the process of implementing a project, we have a cost estimate at various stages, whether it's conceptual, preliminary, right away, or maybe final design. So this number that they provided us was their estimate from last spring. So it's always based on a more recent engineer's estimate. So they've done the final design, they've tabulated the quantities that the contractors will use to put their bid together, and they come up with a number. So it is not a very dated estimate, quite frankly. We did budget 2.3 million. Their number, quite honestly, came in at what we had previously budgeted for in 2024. So yeah, it's a little bit high, and we are not satisfied with that. I think when we choose consultants, we consider how they perform, and this would be an indication of less than preferable performance, quite frankly, by the consultant.
So, I mean, I don't know how many, who was our consultant that did this?
This was done by Lockmuller Group.
Because they do a lot of our stuff, right?
Well, I think it's fair to say no, they really haven't. They have done some traffic study work for us in the past. This was, I think, the first design contract that we've had with them. And we don't have another one in the works right now. So, you know, that's not the only thing that we look at, quite frankly, but it is certainly an important data point. It is a little disappointing. It is and I think maybe you've talked to Thomas about the situation. We do have a lot of work out there, in the industry. MoDOT has a ton of money. The governor put 2.8 billion towards reconstruction of I-70, and that has started. And then you factor in all the other work. MSD just got a stormwater tax approved, right?
Yep.
They're already doing a ton of work at MSD. So there's a lot of infrastructure work going on in the area. So this wave that we've seen, I think, is crashing. So you're seeing a lot of demand for contractors and consultants too, frankly. And I think we're starting to see it hit. We were pleased that we got a number of bidders for our concrete street slab replacement earlier in the year. So I was kind of optimistic based on that, frankly, and maybe our consultant was too. But this is definitely a different indicator of the industry, I think, at this point.
All right. And then the only other thing I had, so the replacement signal, the one over by Lake Chesterfield. When we replace that, is that gonna also fix the timing? The timing on that one and the one at Manchester and West Glen Farms are like very off and bad, and I hear a lot about it. So I would love it if we could fix that problem.
You're talking about the one at Pierside.
The one at Pierside, and then, I mean, I know the one that's on 100 isn't ours, that's a MoDOT one.
Correct, yeah.
But that one at Pierside is a little, it's off compared to the one at 100, and the one at 100, it takes, I think, 3 minutes to cycle, which is insane. I think if
So-
Nathan was on here too, he'd tell you he gets to pull his hair out every day coming out of there to try to make that happen.
So that's, Councilmember, that has certainly been a primary goal of the project to improve the traffic flow from 100 through Pierside. And that was always one of the intents of the project. We're replacing all the signal hardware and in the field, that signal will be completely replaced, as will the other two. So the components, the cabinet components, will all be updated, and it should be able to run precisely at the same time and in sync with MoDOT's signal in theory. That's what they tell me. So that is certainly a goal. Now, was it ever a good idea to put a signal at Pierside in close proximity with Route 100? No, it was a terrible idea at the time. They probably knew it. Somebody reluctantly agreed to it, and we've been stuck with it because anytime you put two signals in close proximity like that, it creates challenges in terms of essentially as you live it every day, we realize that those signals have to be precisely in sync. Because if they are not, it creates issues. And signals, unfortunately, are mechanical devices and they do fail. And more often than most people realize, frankly.
I mean, can we take that signal out and just not replace it? I don't know if that's the better answer.
Honestly, I don't know that we really looked at that in depth. My gut would say probably not. You need either a roundabout or, could you put a roundabout in there? It's possible, I suppose. We have not studied that.
Yeah. I mean,
It's possible.
To me, that whole interchange there is a lot going on. We've talked about the Truman Road before. I mean, that, I think from Truman all the way over to Pierside, that is just a disaster waiting to happen. All of it is bad. So, all right, whatever. Anybody got anything else? No?
You need a motion.
We need a motion to proceed. Made by Ms. Nyan. Anybody care a second? Mr. Bros, all right. All those in favor of proceeding, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone object? Anyone abstain? All right, let's rebuild some roads. This will be exciting. Up next, federal supplemental agreement for Manchester and Taylor.
Chair Farmer and council members, this next item is obviously directly related to the prior. As I mentioned, East West Gateway has provided this program where we can ask for additional funding. They did grant us the maximum that we were allowed under the program, which was $432,000. I also want to apologize for a mistake or two in my memo. It's not 832, it's 432,000. I was clearly thinking about my vacation last week when I prepared this, so I apologize. At any rate, to formally obtain the $432,000, we have to execute a supplemental agreement with MoDOT. That basically changes the amount of eligible funding that we are going to receive. So that's what the intent in here with this recommendation is. We are recommending approval supplement to our prior programming agreement to obtain federal funding from MoDOT. Supplement will increase the amount we get by $432,000. So that's the request to you tonight is to approve us moving forward with a supplemental agreement with MoDOT to obtain the additional $432,000 in federal funding for the project.
So moved.
All right, Mr. Marshall makes the motion. Mr. Jaxi seconds it. I just have one quick question. I don't think it matters. Is this supplemental, can we do that for any other projects or is this like a total amount for everything for the year? Like is each project an individual thing?
Yes, they're individual agreements, so it's just for this project.
Okay, great. All those in favor of accepting our updated agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, got that passed. Now we get our right-of-way maintenance bids. Still you, Rick?
Yep, thank you, Chair Farmer, council members. This next item, frankly, I'd like to postpone it until your next meeting if that's suitable.
Sure.
I really want to, at this point, just introduce it to you. We did open bids, as you know, I think we in the fall, usually in October, September, we advertise for right-of-way maintenance contractors for the following year. We did open bids on September 25th for next year, and we received 21 submittals from contractors wanting to do work for us, which is great. We got 2 new bids in. Left to Right is a company that does essentially mud jacking, if you're familiar with that work. It's used to raise concrete slabs. And in this case, what they do is they raise sidewalks. So when we have trip hazards that we can correct by raising up a sidewalk, that's what we intend to use them for. So instead of removing the slab completely, they inject grout underneath the slab and it raises back up essentially to make it level. So we expect it's a more cost-effective solution than simply removing and replacing, which is what we've done in most cases in the past. So we have pricing from Left Right, and then we also have a new contractor named America's Parking Remarking, which I find to be a difficult name, but that's just me maybe. And they are a striping contractor, which is really good news. They've given us a pretty good price for striping of our roads. And we've had to rely on a kind of a sole source contractor, frankly, in the past. So this is a good thing for us. Get some competition in the marketplace and potentially some lower prices. So that will certainly help, I think, save a few dollars or allow us to do more work potentially, stretch our dollars in the future. So with that, we have not finished our review of the bids. Essentially what we do next is determine rough contract allocations based on the budget numbers that we put together. So because that next meeting that we have this month is budget, I felt it probably makes a little more sense to present this to you at that same time, because all these allocations are based on the budget numbers. So that was the intent, is to postpone this formally for approval to your next meeting in October, and then hopefully have it in front of the whole city council in November and December. So that, unless there's any
Do we have a motion to postpone it, or can we just not
You can just not act on it.
do anything?
Yep.
All right, we'll just let that go then till our next meeting.
that'd be fine.
Are we still doing the grinding off of sidewalks too, when they're raised up?
So that's the mud jacking is hopefully we're gonna be able to
Change
use.
change out one for the other?
Well, that and, dependent, if it's a small little bit, then, it'll be determined by the Department of Public Works, which will be the more appropriate response, but also wanted to provide a little input too on this, just going forward. Looking at it, taking a quick peek at it, because we just opened them. We did separate out, it's pretty cool. I talked with you, Chair Farmer, about this. We're starting to kind of use GIS as asset management on a lot of different things, and we've actually identified all of the areas that we mow with that technology. And we were able to break that out from our standard right-of-way maintenance. So this is a step in the right direction. So just wanted to call out good work.
Great.
And yeah, if I To jump in there real quick, I was gonna mention it and Thomas started talking about it, but what we're hoping to do is get to more of a defined quantity bid, so mowing, landscape maintenance, stormwater BMP maintenance, some of these areas that frankly, in the past, we've done kind of an undefined quantity bid, so they will bid their rates per hour, right? So it's in a lot of cases, it's been a lot of time and materials type work, which is really there's really not a better way to do a lot of this undefined work up front. But as we're going forward, we're hoping we can save money by getting more to a defined quantity bid basis. So what we're gonna do is put mowing out as a separate bid, and it'll be all laid out in black and white in their contract documents, exactly what we want them to mow. And with specifications in terms of how they mow and how frequently they mow. And they'll give us a price to do it, and hopefully we can get more competition and then maybe reduce our prices that we're getting to do the work. So mowing was the one. Landscape bed maintenance, we've added a lot of landscape over the last 10 years, say. The islands on 109, the medians on 109, 100, even Manchester Road, Strucker Road. That would be a package, and then we would have one for stormwater MPs that we maintain as well. So we're trying to get those separate bids out this fall, and then that we present back to you end of the year or early next year potentially for approval.
All right. Moving on, we've got the Centaur Road bridge repairs.
Believe I'm gonna take that one. So every 2 years, we do inspections along with MoDOT on our 37 bridges that are on our National Bridge Inventory System, which are any bridges with a span of 20 feet or in length or longer. And this most recent inspection in January 2024, Centaur Road Bridge 4602112, also known as 3112 by the city, had some really high priority repairs that MoDOT recommended us getting to sooner than later. Most notably, the superstructure, the girders in this instance had some fairly severe damage to them. A 4 out of 10 rating, which is the lowest of our 37 structures. And we recently had GBA, George Butler Associates, do a bridge master plan for us, and that was their #1 structure they also rated that we need to get to soon. And with them having done that bridge master plan for us, we thought they would be the best to put together this rehabilitation plan for us. And we were going to enter into a consultant agreement with them, the amount of $25,000 to basically put together the engineering design specifications to do that work for us.
All right, anybody got any questions or care to make?
How did it get
a motion?
damaged? Floods?
What's that?
Were they flooded or how did it get damaged?
So that bridge in particular, actually, back in 2012 was not a full replacement. It was a rehab. And the girders, I can't say they weren't in the greatest shape, but they're not sure when they redid the deck if something didn't happen. But they just noted some severe damaged ends, and it was originally built in 1960, so the girders are old.
I do remember that it was done once before. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, they only
in
redid
12
the
years,
deck.
how do-
They only redid the deck. They didn't
Okay.
do anything else,
Oh,
so it's originally those are really old girders, so.
Anybody else?
No, that's the bridge right before Wild Horse Creek.
All right, anybody care to make a motion to proceed with the agreement? Mr. Gross makes the motion, seconded by Mr. Marshall. All those in favor with moving forward with the agreement, I guess.
Basically, put together the engineering.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, and last but not least, proposed purchase of a Chevrolet Colorado pickup truck.
I can speak on this, Rick. So just a quick note on this. We had in 2024 budget, we had budgeted for a new pickup truck. We had budgeted $35,000 in the capital improvement sales tax fund. On top of that, we did go out and get quotes for this new truck. and we're almost at capacity. We've almost hired everyone up. The Department of Public Works has full staff at this point, which is great. They are the ones also who utilize the city vehicles, and if you've seen the van and some of the other vehicles we have, they're kind of reaching their end of life. So at this point, we're trying to work a new vehicle into the rotation to allow for our staff to be properly moving around the city. In this case, we did get the 3 bids as discussed earlier, and two of them, one of them came in below what had been budgeted. So tonight, the department would be recommending moving forward with the low bid.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Jaxi, seconded by Mr. Albers. All those in favor?
I just got a question. On, that size pickup truck. I mean, is there a reason to go to that size, say, versus the 1/2 ton?
In this case, Rick, wasn't it to put the equipment on there to for snow removal if needed?
He plows with it. He would use a snowplow on that truck, the new one.
Yeah, wasn't that the intent?
Well, quite frankly, we've gotten away from some of the snowplowing we had been doing. We still have the larger truck, the Silverado. It could be out, and we haven't really talked through this yet for this winter, but that's still a possibility that truck would be outfitted with a.
This wouldn't take a snow.
With the winter, but this smaller truck, probably not, and it's more a function of, frankly, 99% of the time, we're driving around using that truck for other things. And do we really need that large of a truck on a day-to-day basis? And I feel like we don't really want to be doing snow plowing as much as we may have done it in the past. But that is a good question for sure.
Yeah, it's just a smaller truck, I don't know how much more it is to go to a 1/2 ton, but if it's not needed, it's not needed.
I was gonna ask, I know with our arborist now, he's saved a huge amount of money by getting the chainsaw. Are there other tools or things in his arsenal that can get strapped on one of these trucks that makes his life easier to do those things so that we can amp that up even more? I don't know. I don't know if it's I don't know how that works, but.
There does come a point, and I can let Rick speak on to it as well, but there does come a point where, say you, with the truck, if you want to outfit it with certain things, liability becomes an issue. The chainsaw is pretty good just because he knows how to use a chainsaw, and we do have insurance in that sense. But he's also been directed for that, like for that instance with the chainsaw, he's not supposed to be removing, more than 6 inches from a log. It's supposed to be a pretty small shrub that be coming out. So at that point, he calls our contractor. The same would kind of go towards snow removal. We've tried to move towards contractors for that work as well, just because it's pretty grueling. That being said, Rick, is there anything that you could think with this truck model versus a different one that we could have that make it more efficient?
I don't know if I'm understanding what you're saying there. I just want to make sure you guys are getting the right tool.
That's a good utility of it, yeah.
Then
It's a smaller truck.
Yeah.
Are we doing it to save a little? I don't think gas mileage would be much different. So.
I would rather have a truck that can do a lot of things rather than it's very
So
tightly.
I don't want to complicate it, but if you're doing it to save a little bit of money, a 1/2 ton's probably the best value. But if you don't need it, you still don't need it. But mileage wise, these are gonna be about the same.
So I don't care one with the other. I just want to make sure you guys
So-
aren't buying some thing that is
Like,
a piece of junk.
I don't feel like we brought this to you wishing we could have a bigger truck, and we really felt like we needed a bigger truck, but we just felt this was cheaper. That's not the case. I think we felt like it works best for us 99% of the time. It's easier. Well, Brendan, you might want to speak to it. frankly.
Yeah, I drive in Colorado in 2023, I think, and I'm not hauling things and I'm not hooking up a trailer. I occasionally haul message boards, which it's perfectly capable of doing that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not gonna put a snowplow on it, I don't think,
No,
but it's just it's,
Okay.
and I think the 1/2 ton was over $10,000 more.
Mhm.
I know it was in the 40s because Scott had told me, so.
More for this arborist to
well, actually,
do
so
his work.
the arborist is driving the Silverado, the 1/2 ton
Oh.
right now. And so he expressed a desire to use the larger truck because we did outfit it with a water tank for one thing. And he felt like with the bed, he might be able to haul a little bit more equipment because he
Sure.
is, and he's doing a great job, by the way. He's been a great asset to us and he's not afraid to get his hands lightly dirty,
Mercy.
right? So he'll take his chainsaw out and clear some small trees and that kind of stuff in a pinch, if that makes sense. So that's worked out very well. Right now, I think the regular Colorado would work quite well for our needs, frankly. That's why we brought it.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of purchasing this truck, please say aye.
Bye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, new truck coming your guys' way.
In this case, this will go to the city council at the next meeting for.
Right. New truck coming your way. All right, that's all we've got for this evening, unless there's anything miscellaneous anybody wanted to bring up. If not, all we need is a motion to adjourn. Made by Mr. Jaxie, seconded by Ms. Diane. All those in favor of adjourning, please say
Oh, I
aye.
did have a quick question.
Laura's got a question. What's your question?
Yes, no, I did have a resident that called to ask about issues with code enforcement and fines accruing, and I did kind of explain the court process to them. And so I just wanted to pass this on. They have expressed some of the same concerns that we've heard before, which is that they really appreciate code enforcement. They were very complimentary, but they felt like, you know, kind of once it gets into the system that it's hard to seek compliance. And so I just wanted to ask, do I need to follow up with, is it better if I talk with Tom, Rick, or Brian about an issue
You can
Oh,
go,
tomorrow?
you can go straight to me with the issue,
Okay.
me and Joe Boonich.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, all those in favor of getting out of here, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we will see everybody on the 21st. Two meetings this